Flash Professional makes it very easy to import sound files into a project. This lesson demonstrates how to go about this task. So here I have a blank project opened up. You can see I have absolutely nothing in the library. And I'm going to want to import a sound file. I have an MP3 that I'm going to be using for this particular example. So I'm going to go to the File menu and choose Import. And from here I can import to Stage or import to Library. With sound files, it doesn't really matter which one you choose because everything gets imported to the library when you're dealing with audio. So I'm going to choose Import to Library. Now I'll be able to choose a sound file. So here we go. We have this audio.mp3, and we'll open it up. This will import through this little dialog here, and then show up in our library. Note that you can import MP3s, and you can import WAV files. Those are probably the two most common types of files that you'll be able to import into Flash Professional. Once a sound file is actually in the library, we can see that it shows a little sound speaker icon here, and we're able to actually get some playback. So we can play this file and preview it if we want to. So let's say we actually want to use this sound file within a project. What we can do is on our timeline, just rename this to sound. And then what we'll do is just grab that audio file and plop it onto the stage. You can barely see it, but right down here we can see the beginning of a waveform expressed. Let's go over to frame 80, and I'm going to choose to insert frames up to frame 80. And we can see that there is actually some sound in here. We're going to have to extend these frames out quite a bit to actually see much of the resulting waveform. But here it is here. I'm going 660 frames out here, and it's laying down this audio bed into my timeline. So there are a number of different ways to make adjustments to these sounds. If we select any of the frames that make up the span of this sound, we can actually go to the Properties Inspector, and there's a little sound property group here where we can switch out the sound for a different one in our library if we want to. And we can choose from a number of preset effects, so we can fade in, fade out, or do some sort of a custom fade. So when we edit the sound envelope, that's performing a custom fade for us. And there really aren't a lot of things that we can do here with this sound file, but we can play back, we can make adjustments to the envelope, as you can see here. So basic fades is really all that you're going to get here. And if it is a stereo file like this, you do get control over both channels. So you have that, but I would suggest, if it's something that's really important, that you use an external program like Adobe Audition in order to actually edit this file before you bring it into Flash Professional. Then we have sync. Sync determines how it behaves on the timeline. So by default, it's set to event sound, which is basically going to start whenever the frame starts it. So as soon as the playhead hits this particular frame, the sound will start playing. And if I pull that frame out to say 35, you can see that you can have a little bit of dead space first with no audio. And then when we hit this frame, the event kicks in and the audio starts playing. If we go back in here, we can see that we have also start, stop. So we're able to start and stop our particular sound files at different times. You can see when I choose stop, we still get a little bit of waveform here, but we don't actually get anything out of it. And that's because we've stopped the sound. And then we have stream sound. So stream sound is lots of times the most useful way of actually synchronizing sound to particular frames. And as I scrub through here, you would actually be able to hear which portions of the waveform are assigned to each particular frame. So if you're doing something like bringing in some recorded dialogue and need to do some lip syncing, stream sound is a very good way of lining up the movements on the stage with what's going on in your timeline in this sound layer here. And note that you can have multiple layers with sound in them. You don't have to have just one. I mean, in this case, it's just a basic audio bed. but you could have effect sounds dispersed throughout the timeline as well. We also have in the properties area this ability to loop a sound forever, or to repeat a sound, that is to loop it a certain number of times. We can also go into the library, right-click on a sound file, and check out its properties. So here comes the properties for this. And from here we can choose things such as compression. So do we want to use MP3 compression, which is probably what you normally want to do. You can also choose to do speech or ADP CM. And these two are better for voice, really. Raw is going to pretty much not compress it at all. So whatever your particular compression settings are, that's what's going to actually pop out. So in this case, we're going at 352 kilobits per second. That's kind of a lot. We could go up here to 44 kilohertz, down to 5. So you've got a bit of control over raw. Default is just going to use the general publish settings for the document, and you can change that through the document properties dialog. We can see here we can specify sample rate and ADP CM bits. So you have a few things to choose from there. And with MP3, you can use the import equality, or you can adjust the bitrate through these particular controls here. And the nice thing is, it tells you what the estimated size of the file and settings will be when you actually process it. So that's pretty nice. You've actually got this export for ActionScript linkage and runtime shared library linkage as well. You can test it from here. So test and stop, it's basically like play and stop. You can update it. So you can see we have a particular setting here which specifies exactly where the sound file exists now. If we edited this in that same location, hit update, it would update it with that new file. We can also import another file to take the place of this file. So those are the basics of importing and working with sound in Flash Professional CS6.